Welcome to a live edition of the Deep Look podcast. It is, what day is it? I don't even know anymore. Saturday, May 27th, and we are through the pre-quarters round here at College Nationals. We're still at the fields, and man, the energy is just buzzing here. Charlie Eisen alongside Keith Rayner. Keith, what an amazing round of pre-quarters we just got to experience.
Unbelievable. There were so many things about it that were great, and not just the ultimate. I mean, we obviously had a series of really exciting games, a cascading ending there where you had just one round end, and then the next game end, and then the next game end, and then for those who were at the fields, I mean, there was just this energy as fans were literally running from one field to the next as each game ended. Which, for those who used to go to Club Nationals in Sarasota, was kind of what it was like there. It was a great. Somebody actually commented this, Charlie. I was told it was overheard. Somebody said it's like Field Pass in real life. So that's what's going on.
That's the idea behind Field Pass, for what it's worth. All right, let me just quickly run down the pre-quarters result. I mean, we actually need to talk a little bit about what happened at the end of the pool play as well. But here's the pre-quarter scores, and then I'll give you the quarterfinals matchups. We'll start in the women's division. Stanford beats UCSB 14-13 in a game that before the tournament you would never have expected to be anywhere near that close, but it was a barn burner. Carleton beats Northeastern 15-10, although they were down at halftime 8-6. So that's what kind of round we had. Tufts over Colorado State 15-8 in the only true blowout of the round. And then Washington holds off Oregon 14-11. Giving you the quarterfinals matchups: UNC versus Stanford, Carleton versus Vermont, Tufts versus UBC, and Washington versus Colorado, all of the top 8 seeds making it into the bracket. Over on the men's side, Brown beats Carleton 15-11, holding off a sort of a late comeback from Carleton. Vermont over Cal 14-13 on double game point. Oregon, the shock upset over Colorado 15-13. And then Texas blowing out Georgia 15-8, yielding the quarters matchups of UNC versus Brown, Pittsburgh versus Vermont, Cal Poly SLO versus Oregon, and Massachusetts versus Texas. That is all. It's 8 of the top 9 seeds make it to quarters.
This is a little footnote for you, Charlie, because we talked about this before the tournament, during the tournament, early on. Remember, we talked about the stat, how rare it is for pools to go to seed. Less than 1 per year goes to seed over these past 8 years. 3 different pools went to seed.
Including the crazy pool in women's division.
Many of them without an undefeated team among them. It's that kind of weekend. They're like the chalk results belie the drama that took place to get to those outcomes.
Well, we have some Ulti World reporters standing by, ready to talk about what we saw today. I don't know who's stepping up first. It'll be Jenna Weiner. That's your headset, yes. And I mean, just what a round. Jenna, tell us what we need to know about today.
I expect the expected and the unexpected way, something like that. I was on the game that went to overtime, Washington beating Oregon. Just incredible scenes. This is ultimate at its finest. These large ultimate tournaments, the fields lined with fans, especially once we got into the later stages, games going to universe, games going to overtime, upsets that mattered, but also upsets that didn't matter in the slightest. Northeastern beating Colorado on universe in the women's division to secure a spot in pre-quarters. Colorado had won the pool already. Northeastern goes on to lose in pre-quarters. Does it matter? But also Colorado lost to Northeastern on universe. So what is happening?
That was wild. What happened in that game? Did Colorado play its starters the whole game? That's my first question.
From what I heard, I talked to Coach Claire Chastain. Colorado did play its starters, at least most of them. I was hearing that Bailey Shigley maybe wasn't active or wasn't fully active. However, they were playing more even lines on the Quandary side. Claire said that they were running basically 2 handlers, 5 cutters, and Northeastern zone was fantastic all game. And when you only have 2 true handlers out there, it's going to make that job a lot more difficult.
And these are the kind of wild results that you just don't know exactly what to do with. I'm sure Northeastern would much rather have a quarterfinals win if they could, but being able to walk around from this tournament, to walk away from this tournament and say, like, we beat Colorado, like, nobody can doubt that we had something in us. I think that's going to be a comforting fact after the way that their season closed out. When you look at this pre-quarter round, what of these games stands out to you, Jenna?
I mean, the emotional aspect of the Oregon-Washington one stands out to me, but I was also very much involved on the sidelines. It felt like got a chance to at least get an insight onto what the time delays were, although I know that wasn't necessarily communicated back because I was a little occupied on the sideline. But I think with the Stanford Santa Barbara game, it was on the main streaming field, Universe Point. Burning Skirts lose 2 Universe Point games today. They lose to Carleton in the morning. They lose to Stanford in the last round. The Burning Skirts, oh, what could have been.
Wow. And I mean, a team that feels set up well for the future, but they peaked at the right time. You can't deny that. They looked the best they looked all season today.
And just came up short.
Yeah.
Just.
Wow. Well, let's look ahead to quarters then, Jenna, before we let you go. Stanford UNC, Carleton, Vermont, Tufts UBC, Washington, Colorado. We don't exactly have all of them in the exact order that we would have expected, but the top 8 seeds make it to quarters. Anything here that you have circled that you think, that one maybe we could see an upset?
I think the one that stands out to me as potential upset has got to be Carleton, Vermont. Not to doubt the ability of this Vermont team. They have looked fantastic this weekend. However, Carleton has the horses when Syzygy are on. They can beat nearly anyone in the field, and it's just simply been a matter of whether they've been able to or not in those specific moments. So I think if Ruckus don't come out firing, then I think Syzygy has a real chance to pull that upset. Although upset in terms of historical terms, Carleton making another semis, maybe not so much.
And classic narrative battle going into that one, you have the team that's had to slug it out a bunch of times in Carleton, and then the team that feels like they've been untested because they've just been waltzing past people. Is Vermont's fresh legs going to be more valuable than Carleton's battle-hardened experience? That's going to be one of the questions that those two teams will have to answer.
It's going to be a lot of fun, and I feel like I'm ready for surprises at this point after what we saw at the end of today and going into the pre-quarter round. So, Jenna, thank you so much, and looking forward to the action tomorrow.
Thanks for having me.
So, Edward Stevens, D1 men's editor, will join us now as we turn our attention over to the men's division. Not quite as much drama at the end of pool play, Edward, but what an unbelievable round of pre-quarters.
Well, yes, but let's not skip ahead over the end of pool play too quickly, because the very last game of the day was, even though both teams had already qualified for the bracket, was a Vermont-Carleton game that was absolutely electric. Vermont went down early, had to come back, which is a theme that would be repeated later on in the day. Their best defender and probably best player, Turner Allen, got injured with about 4 points left to go. And the combination of Declan Kervick, Kuchon Ponzio, Carl Crawford, and James Cairn on Universe Point to rip a disc out of the sky made up for the loss, showing off the team's depth and resolve in a way that, we were worried about yesterday. And that's a team that did it in the last round of pool play, then did it again in a phenomenal pre-quarterfinal matchup against Cal that went down to the wire. They were on defense on Universe Point against a Cal team where Dexter Clyburn looked just absolutely in control of everything, and Carl Crawford lays out on an underneath before they march upwind to get their break to win the game. And the sidelines were thronged. The energy was tremendous, and it was one of, if not the best ending to a game of the day.
Crazy. Carl Crawford with some just sick plays, and Keith said it on the Field Pass broadcast, he's not just a bucket getter.
No, Pat said that after he gets the huge block. That was massive, and coming up in the clutch too, no less. And Vermont really showing a lot of resolve, as you mentioned, in that game, and doing it without one of their top players. Like, it's easy for teams to get down on themselves and quit in that situation, especially for a team that, yeah, they've been to nationals before. Yeah, they played some really high level tournaments, but this is really a different type of crucible, and it's not one that they have a lot of experience in.
No, it's not. I think they're set up well for tomorrow now that they feel sort of battle tested by today. But even though the finishes were good for Vermont, I'm not sure those were the biggest stories of the day, even though they were the best games. I mean, I feel like the biggest story is that we have
Let me cut you off. Let me cut you off there.
Let's hear it, Keith.
Because I already know what you're going to say.
Of course.
I mean, Cornell beat Pitt. Like,
Yep.
why? I don't know why Charlie didn't lead that.
Yeah.
You know, it's Metro East erasure per usual for biased Ulti World.
I saw a meme. It was Pit B, a giant fish, eating a smaller fish that was Cornell, eating a smaller fish that was Pit A.
Tell me,
real. I think they did.
This is the new circle of suck. We've achieved the best circle of suck that could be.
That means Pit B is in quarters right now, I think.
If
right.
if they need to drive here right now and stake their claim,
Hey, if Brody Smith's Florida team was able to get in on some technicality Florida C team, I don't see any reason Pit B can't replace Pit A tomorrow.
Yeah, but anyway, so that's the big story. The sub-headline is that there is one South Central team remaining in the field, but it's not the one anybody would have picked heading into this tournament. Colorado is out of the tournament after dropping a tight one to Oregon. This Colorado team, I mean, we saw them yesterday when they were mostly successful outside of a loss to Pitt. They just never quite looked as strong as they had at times during the season.
It was hard to see what was going on in that game in some ways because Colorado's offense for most of the game looked untouchable. And then they dropped a pull, they made some flubs, and it seemed like they couldn't get the disc back. They just kept getting broken. And Oregon's O-line stood tall, and I mean, wow. Really feels like a shocking upset in some ways, but Oregon, I mean, Micah Glass, what a player.
He's dealing.
He is dealing. He took over that game. He took over for them late.
Yeah, put him as the hub at the blackjack table. Let him deal.
Goodness.
But you know, we saw this from Oregon earlier in the season. They are a bit of a volatile team, but also they bring energy. I mean, Gabe Novus is one of the scrappiest players around. Itai Chang never gives an inch of ground. Micah Glass is going to throw whatever he wants. They have plenty of bigs. Max Massey is a bulldog leading the D-line offense. This is a team that just isn't going to quit. So if you don't put them away early and you give them a little window, they're going to grab their crowbar, crack it much wider than you want, and pull out a victory. That's what they've done all year when they get an inch. They take the mile.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly broke into Colorado's home and took their quarterfinal right away from them. We had in Beat Charlie Challenge, which is a nice measuring stick for me to get a sense of what the expectations are. Over 400 entries, and 95% of them had Colorado reaching quarterfinals.
Well, I mean, yeah. You mentioned the other South Central team, Texas getting through. Colorado destroyed Texas earlier today.
Yeah, now Texas was resting basically their top 4 or 5 guys in that game. Of course, they were resting Chambers, who has played and looked pretty decent.
On a torn ACL.
On a torn ACL. I just talked to John Clyde, who's also had a great day, and he said, Chambers is looking pretty good, and he's not a liability on defense if we just hold.
That's a good point.
It's a great point. Yeah, they made a choice to rest their starters and just take their spot in the bracket, not try to play up into the 2 seed versus the 3 seed when they were playing Colorado earlier. And I think it was the right choice. Jake Worthington, Zach Slayton, John Clyde, and Matt Chambers all looked super fresh when they played Georgia. It was slow going at first, kind of a sloggy 6-6 game with both teams getting their shots. And then you blinked and Texas was up 13-6.
It was over so fast. We had it on Field Pass for a couple minutes, and then all of a sudden the game was out of hand.
Yep.
Well,
Zach Slayton might be making a case for Opody consideration. Honestly, he's having a phenomenal tournament.
That's Cadillac Zach to you, baby.
Cadillac Zach gone from U24 snub to college nationals hero in a hurry here.
Well, and every time I see some huge, sweet play on Texas, I look up and it's Zach Slayton. So makes sense to me. Let's look ahead to these quarters. Brown UNC, Vermont Pitt, Oregon SLO, Texas UMass. Now, I want to point this out. Oregon has already beaten SLO. They will be the underdog, but they have beaten SLO this season. Vermont, ostensibly the favorite by seed over Pittsburgh. They have beaten Pittsburgh this season, although I think Pittsburgh will be the favorite tomorrow by maybe 1.5, 2.5 goals. Where do you see the biggest potential for a surprise? Which games do you have circled?
First off, the game I have circled is not one that I necessarily think has the potential for surprise, because Brown, North Carolina is a rematch of last year's final. We've still got Jacques Nissen, Leo Gordon, Ben Dameron, Rutledge Smith ready to go toe-to-toe. These are teams that are two of the best in the country at season-long preparation, at keeping the end of the postseason in sight at all times, and two teams with major stars on the roster. So I think UNC is certainly the favorite. I will be shocked if Brown can defeat them, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than people expect. I don't think this is just going to be a North Carolina roll. Outside of that, I'm pretty intrigued by the Oregon SLO matchup, and that's partly because Oregon already has a win this year, but also partly because SLO hasn't really been pushed in the way many of these other teams have been pushed yet this tournament. So if Oregon get out to, a fast start, get ahead 6-4 or something like that, I want to see, can SLO respond? They haven't had to on this stage this year, and they kind of fell short in that way last year. So do they have what it takes?
I mean, I want to see that SLO Oregon matchup, because it's going to be like, I don't know, like RRR. I mean, it's going to be action scene after action scene after action scene, and just animals, explosions everywhere. I mean, it's going to be fireworks in that one. And
Animals and explosions everywhere.
You obviously haven't seen RRR.
Venturing into good meme territory right
Thank you.
here.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I want to highlight, we're going to be streaming all 8 of the quarterfinals. There are 2 rounds of quarters, 8:30 and 10:30. In the morning, we will have on the showcase field, Carleton versus Vermont in the women's division, and then the other 3 games will be on Field Pass. And the showcase game at the 10:30 round is going to be that Oregon SLO matchup. We'll have the other 3 games on Field Pass. So you're not going to miss a minute of any of it, and can't wait for tomorrow morning.
It's gonna be a great round. We've been waiting for this. And we talked about how deep the field of contenders is this year, and now we've got pretty much all of those teams in this group. Maybe there's a couple of cast members who got killed off a little early, but for the most part, you've got everybody you were expecting to be here, and it looks like we have nothing but great games ahead of us. I also want to note, through whatever crazy methodology we want to talk about, teams resting people or whatever, all but 1 5 seed at the entire tournament has won a game, and the 1 5 seed that failed to win a game lost one of their games 15-13. So do with that data what you will, but I think it sounds like a pretty great tournament.
It's going to be awesome. Okay, so chance for quick hits in the chat. If you have a quick question or thought you want to get in there, now's the time. Just roll over the Subs Voice channel, click the little chat box icon. We will take a couple of quick questions here in a rapid fire segment. Edward, thank you so much. And so tomorrow's going to be so much fun.
It's going to be a blast.
All right. So Edward Stevens with us here on Deep Look. Thank you, Edward. Keith, final thoughts on today before we get these rapid fire in?
Oh, man, the awards conversations are just percolating in my head. People are having them now, and there's just like, hey, we have a lot of the most important games of the season to add more data to the conversation, but there have been some really standout performances, especially by young players. I mean, the Rookie of the Year conversation is fascinating, but even just deciding the All-American seems really difficult. So it has been a real eye-opening couple of days here in Ohio. We got a couple of questions coming in. Ramel asks, how about them Dogs? Bummer they couldn't finish the game against Texas. I mean, Tell me that this 2 days doesn't encapsulate everything that we knew about Georgia. They could play up against anybody, but also it just for them it was they had a lot of trouble putting great games together, game in and game out.
Yeah.
Obviously that's tough for any team, but it was just never something that was their strength.
Yeah, they had no answers late against Texas, and I think that's because they had to run their top guys a lot. But I mean, let's be honest, they came in as a very low seed. They're a 5 seed in their pool, and they absolutely played up to the potential that they had. Sure, you'd love to see them win that game against Texas, but their road was going to come to an end in pre-quarters or quarters. And I think for them to fight through to the bracket, it was a nice finish to their season for them. Are the field lines as bad in person as they are on the stream? Yes, they are. They look exactly on the field as they look on the stream. It's very frustrating. I think USA Ultimate's pretty frustrated too because these lines were not supposed to be painted, these soccer lines. I don't know why they haven't been able to do anything about them or like paint over them or something. But yeah, bummer. Keith, any hangovers from the COVID pause still apparent on or off the field from Ari Jackson here?
That's a hard one to eye up exactly how it's impacted teams. I know a reputable coach actually floated the idea to me prior to the tournament that teams were going to be a little less disciplined than usual, that teams maybe are a little less solid than usual because of the COVID extensions. I think that skill development is also in a weird spot because on the one hand, you have some underdeveloped, if you weren't coming into this point as like a high level rookie, some of those players may be undercooked right now, but you also have the augmenting factor of all of these like 5th, 6th, 7th year players who are still on rosters who are keeping the general skill level high. And I think sometimes it's leading to really tight rotations. You're seeing teams with like a top 12, like tight mid-level rotations, right? You're not seeing teams being like, okay, we have 4 people and those are the only people that are good, but they do have 12 people and it's like, we're just going to run those 12 people on the ground.
And there are some teams that have a serious drop off. And some players that just aren't really ready for this level. That speaks to that development you're talking about. I like this one from Exor. How would you reseed the brackets based on these first 2 days of nationals? Okay, I'm going to do this right now. I'll start in the men's because that's what's on my screen. Number 1, UNC. Number 2,
Pitt.
UMass. You think Pitt?
Pitt.
Over UMass.
Yeah, I take Pitt.
They've definitely looked good. They were going to be 3 for me after UMass.
It's pretty close between. Oh, Slow has also looked really good.
Slow's 4 for me.
I think I take Slow ahead of UMass too, but I've been a UMass hater for better or for worse.
I've barely seen Brown. I'm going to be honest. I guess I would go Oregon 5, Brown 6, Vermont 7, Texas 8.
Close between Vermont and Texas for me. I think I might take Texas over Vermont, but it's very close in that one.
Keith, you want to do the women's side?
Yeah, let's start in the women's side. Number 1, I don't know. Let me go UNC on that one. UBC 2.
I agree.
Vermont 3.
I agree.
Colorado 4.
Yep.
Stanford 5.
Yeah, I almost
Washington 6.
almost want Stanford in front of Colorado, but they got the head-to-head. So
Tufts 7. Washington 8. I think that's about where I'd have it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I might have Tufts in front of Carleton. Tufts in front of Carleton. Carleton's looked a little shaky.
True.
And Washington is just not deep enough to really hang in at this level. They're going to get, Colorado is maybe the best possible matchup for them because Colorado has been shooting it away a lot, and I think Abby Hecko could have a monster game tomorrow.
Yeah, look, it's fun that the team that you feel like the least confident about their ability also has arguably the best player in the division. So who knows?
Okay, so then let's see here. Oh, a little Santa Cruz context. Georgia saying that the cap went off, and according to the time, 12-12 should have been Universe, but the horn itself blew late. UCSC scored on what we thought was Universe, but the observer said they were using the horn and not the actual time, so it was ruled not Universe. Wow. I had not heard that until right now. That is not the way that should be handled by the observers. Normally, they use a clock with a watch. You don't use the horn. The horn is just an indicator. Shocking to me.
Yeah, that's kind of a weird situation. I want to hear more about that from from another source, and not just
Santa Cruz player in
Santa
the
Cruz
chat.
player. Sorry, Zach. I mean, I'm not hating, but I need a second source to verify. You know what I mean? We do journalism over here. Simon Pollock, bro, my boy Simon Pollock. I don't know if you heard last night. Literally talking about Simon Pollock's an old head from Ultiworld, and I was like, man, when's the last time? So I didn't even follow Ultimate. I wonder if he's still around. Like, does he coach? Is he around? So I'm glad to see you. Yes. Can the Celtics make history tonight? They sure as hell can. So someone else said, like, you know, it's not a question of if somebody's ever going to come back from down 3-0, it's when. So, you know, it's at this point, it's just 2 games in front of you. It doesn't matter what happened behind you.
All right, well, that is going to do it for our live edition of Deep Look. Celtics game starts in 8 minutes. We'll see if they can force Game 7. And we'll see what can happen tomorrow in the quarterfinals at the National Championships. All 8 games coming your way starting at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And then we'll head over to the high school stadium for the semifinals beginning, I believe, at 12:30. That coverage will be coming your way on ESPN Plus. So that's a change from the past. You have to have an ESPN Plus subscription. But if you don't have a cable subscription, it's easy to get an ESPN Plus subscription. Just head over, you can get the Disney Hulu ESPN Plus combo pack or just the ESPN Plus on its own. So that's where those games will be. The finals will be on ESPNU on Memorial Day. I hope everybody's having a great start to their holiday weekend, and we'll see you tomorrow.